Nestled in the heart of Washington, D.C., the exclusive Belmont Heights neighborhood was known for its pristine lawns, luxury townhouses, and an HOA board with an iron grip on its residents. For years, the Belmont Heights Homeowners Association had been ruled by Margaret Langley, a former lobbyist with a reputation for enforcing the rules with ruthless efficiency. When David Carter, a young investigative journalist newly settled in the neighborhood, received a hefty fine for a minor mailbox infraction, he saw an opportunity. What began as a simple inquiry into HOA regulations soon turned into a full-blown investigation. As he pored over financial records and interviewed frustrated homeowners, he discovered a trail of corruption, misappropriated funds, and secret dealings with property developers. The deeper David dug, the more sinister the truth became. Margaret had been leveraging her power to push homeowners into selling their properties under dubious pretenses, allowing her developer associates to acquire them for a fraction of their worth. Those who resisted faced constant harassment, escalating fines, selective rule enforcement, and even fabricated violations. Elderly residents reported sudden spikes in HOA fees, forcing them into financial distress, while younger homeowners faced anonymous threats warning them to stay quiet. Determined to expose the corruption, David found an unlikely ally in Eleanor Brooks, a retired government auditor with a knack for forensic accounting. Eleanor, having spent decades uncovering fraud in federal agencies, was appalled by what she saw in her own backyard. Together, they gathered evidence, uncovering fraudulent contracts, kickbacks, and even illegal campaign donations tied to local officials. The HOA's financial reports revealed a dark web of money laundering, with funds siphoned into offshore accounts. As their findings grew more damning, David and Eleanor faced retaliation. Mysterious figures followed them at night. Their homes were vandalized. A break-in at Eleanor's house resulted in stolen documents, but thankfully, they had already made digital copies. When David's car brakes failed mysteriously on the freeway, he realized they were playing a dangerous game. One night, David returned home to find his apartment ransacked. Papers were strewn across the floor, his computer smashed. A single note lay on his kitchen counter: "Stop now, or disappear." But David refused to be silenced. He took his findings to an editor at the Washington Post, and within days, a multi-part investigative series was published, detailing the HOA's criminal enterprise. The backlash was immediate. Homeowners, previously too afraid to speak up, rallied against the board, demanding justice. Protesters gathered outside Margaret Langley's lavish home, chanting for her resignation. The city launched an investigation, and soon, Margaret and her conspirators were facing criminal charges, including fraud, embezzlement, and intimidation. But the conspiracy ran deeper than anyone had imagined. As authorities delved into the case, they uncovered connections between the HOA and a powerful real estate conglomerate with ties to political figures. Some local officials who had turned a blind eye to Margaret's schemes were now under scrutiny, and a high-profile D.C. senator was implicated in the scandal. The revelations sent shockwaves through the city, leading to a series of high-profile resignations and arrests. Just when David thought the storm had passed, Eleanor disappeared. Her house was empty, her phone disconnected. A single cryptic email arrived in David's inbox from an unknown sender. "She knew too much. Watch your back." Panicked, David retraced their steps, trying to find her. He discovered that Eleanor had been secretly meeting with someone, a whistleblower deep inside the real estate conglomerate. The whistleblower had documents proving that the corruption extended beyond Belmont Heights, reaching into multiple D.C. neighborhoods, all under the control of the same shadowy network. The deeper David looked, the more he realized the true scope of what they had uncovered. This wasn't just about an HOA, it was about systemic fraud on a national scale. Eleanor had likely gone into hiding, or worse, been silenced. David knew he had a choice: walk away and stay safe, or dig deeper and risk everything. As he stood on his balcony, staring at the city skyline, his phone buzzed. A blocked number. He hesitated before answering. A distorted voice spoke. "If you want to know the truth, come to the Capitol parking garage. Midnight. Alone." David arrived at the dimly lit parking garage, his pulse hammering. A hooded figure stepped out of the shadows, passing him a flash drive. Eleanor was right. "This goes all the way to the top," the figure whispered before disappearing into the night. David plugged the flash drive into his laptop, his breath hitching as he scrolled through the files. Documents exposed bribes to senators, secret meetings between real estate moguls and government officials, and offshore accounts filled with millions. Then, his stomach dropped. One of the files was labeled Carter_David.pdf. Shaking, he opened it. It was a detailed dossier. His personal information, every article he had ever written, his movements, even photos of his apartment taken from a distance. At the bottom of the file was a message, "You are next." Before he could react, his screen flickered. A hacking attempt. The files were being remotely deleted. He yanked out the flash drive just in time, but his screen went black. Then, his phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "We warned you. Now it's too late." At that moment, his apartment lights cut out. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his door. Someone was coming. David barely had time to grab his laptop and flee through the fire escape. As he reached the alley below, a black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. Two men in suits jumped out, scanning the area. Heart pounding, he ducked into the shadows, pressing himself against the cold brick wall. Then, a familiar voice whispered behind him, "Come with me if you want to live." David turned, his eyes widening. It was Eleanor. She grabbed his arm and pulled him into a side street just as the men turned toward their direction. "Keep moving," she hissed. They sprinted through the maze of alleyways, the sound of footsteps closing in. Suddenly, headlights flashed ahead. Another black SUV blocked the exit. "We are trapped." David gasped. "Not yet," Eleanor muttered, leading him up a fire escape. As they reached the rooftop, gunshots rang out, shattering the brick wall behind them. They leapt across rooftops, barely avoiding the deadly fire below. Sirens wailed in the distance. Eleanor had triggered an emergency distress call before they were ambushed. "We have to disappear, David. They won't stop until we are dead." A helicopter hovered above, scanning the area with floodlights. Eleanor pulled out a burner phone and punched in a number. "We need extraction. Now." Minutes later, a blacked-out van skidded to a stop in a hidden alley. The doors burst open. "Get in," a masked driver shouted. As they dove inside, the van sped away, disappearing into the night. David exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "Where are we going?" he asked. Eleanor's expression was grim. "Somewhere safe. But first, we bring them down, for good." Subscribe for Part 2.